Okay, so hi students, we are our very first chapter on pure maths. In paper 1 is quadratic. Okay, so if let's say you are from SPM background or maybe you took MS before in IGCSE, then I think you should learn this chapter. Alright, so we will make it as a revision, something like a revision. Okay, to go through with this topic, and also maybe you can try to pass a question later about the quadratic equation. Right. Okay, so let's start with our video for today. Okay, so for chapter 1, we talk about quadratics, and then what is the learning outcome after today's video. So the learning outcome is actually you need to completing the square, okay, for a quadratic polynomial or quadratic equation. Okay, and then you also need to locate the vertex. Vertex means that you can find the minimum and maximum of the quadratic curve and also to sketch a graph. Alright, and after that you need to know how to solve the quadratic equation in one unknown. Alright, so maybe I need to remind you that for A-level syllabus, right, completing the square is one of the very important technique in our syllabus in A-level. Okay, because there are a lot of questions about quadratic equation that they generally need you to completing the square. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, last time when we learned quadratic square in SPM, this technique is not so important, but for A-level syllabus, it's very, very important. Alright, okay. So let's start with our lesson today. Okay, so first you need to know what is the meaning of quadratic expression and quadratic equation. So quadratic an expression means that a relationship between terms. That means this one is one term, right? This is one expression. This is another expression. There's no equal sign. Okay, then when you are having equation, it's formed two expressions are equal. So that means when you have equal sign, we call as equation. Right, so please take note on the difference here. Right, so for general form of a quadratic equation, generally you need to have x with highest power 2. Okay, and then followed by x power 1 and also x power 0. So the highest power in x for the equation quadratic is power 2. Alright, so it should be positive integer, positive 2, highest one is positive 2, and then positive 1, x power 1 or x power 0. Right, so we call it as quadratic equation, and the general form is like this. And then you see all the number in front of the x, right? A, B, and C, we call them as coefficients. So A is the coefficient of x squared, B is the coefficient of x, C is the constant term. Alright, so I hope that you know all this. Okay, right, then now let's start with the very first important technique that we have here, completing the square. Right, so when you want to complete a square, right, for a quadratic equation or quadratic expression, generally you need to make sure that the coefficient of x squared is equals to 1. Then only you can start completing square it. Okay, if let's say it is not equals to 1 for the coefficient, then you need to actually factorize it out first. Then only you can continue to completing square it. Okay, and after that you add and subtract the term b over 2, then square at the same side, and then completing the square by combining the first three terms here become a bracket like this. Okay, because if let's say you do it in the other way around, if you expand this bracket, you will get this one. So you actually do it in the opposite sequence, okay, in the reverse way. So that means now you're having this one, and you can combine it to become this. So this is what we call as completing square. This one we call as expand. Expand usually is very easy one. So when you want to do it in the other way around, we call it complete the square. Right? Okay, so let's have a look. All these are the steps for you, okay, to follow. Then I will show you by using example. Alright, so let's have a look for example 1. Okay, so I think example 1 is very straightforward and simple. Okay, so maybe I can change it to become example 2. Example 1 you solve it yourself later. Maybe I will show you example 2. Almost the same also actually, just that it is a bit different, okay? A bit different. So now, for example 2, they want you to express this expression in the form of a minus x minus b squared, where a and b are positive constant. So if you look at this one, then we actually want you to completing the square. Alright. Okay, so your original expression is this 6x minus x squared. So what you need to do is that maybe you can rewrite it again. So 6x minus x squared, you can check the coefficient. So you can see the coefficient x squared is not a 1, right? So if it is not a 1, then what you need to do is you need to factorize it out, and you write it become x squared minus 6x. Okay, so when you factorize the negative out, right? So that means now the equation for x squared, the coefficient of x squared become 1 already. You have to make sure that this is a 1. Okay, then since you make sure that it is a 1 already, then only you start completing square it. So how you completing square? This is x squared minus 6x. Okay, so you need to have plus something square and then minus something square. So the something square here, the thing inside the bracket are actually the same. Alright, so what is the value that I should put in? Okay, so you need to look at the coefficient of x. So the coefficient of x is negative 6, right? So divided by 2. So divided by 2 means that it is negative 3. So this one also the same, it will be negative 3. Okay, so this is plus b over 2 square minus b over 2 square. So the b for us is negative 6 in this case. Alright, if you refer to the steps that I show you on top above, this is what we are doing now. Okay, plus something square plus b over 2 square minus b over 2 square. Okay, then now you need to complete. Okay, you need to completing the square. That means you need to group the first 3 terms here. Okay, become a bracket only with a square outside. Alright, so what do you have? So x squared, you move it down into the first term in the bracket, so it is the x, and the negative 3 square, you bring it down, become the second term in the bracket, so it will become negative 3 and then square. Alright, so if you don't believe, you try to expand this bracket, you will get these 3 terms on top. Okay, so we are doing it in the other way round, therefore this is how we do it. So when you want to combine them into a bracket with a square, it's usually harder. Okay, so if you don't understand why we need to do that, what you need to do is that you just need to try to expand your answer and see whether you can get this one or not. So these two, the 3 terms here, combine become this one. And if you're having this bracket, when you expand it, you will have these 3 terms. Alright, okay, so after you combine these 3 terms, what else do I have at the back? So negative is still a negative. So negative 3 square, you will have a 9. Alright, then after that, by using some very basic maths knowledge, you multiply the negative in front of the bracket. The bracket is the first term, okay, and also multiply it with the negative 9, which is the second term, and therefore you will have eventually it become 9 minus x minus 3 squared. Okay, so this is how we completing the square for a quadratic expression. Please make sure you know how to do it clearly, because this is a very, very, very important technique that we are going to use in 11 syllabus. Alright, so I hope that you have the idea how we do that. So again, first make sure that the coefficient of x squared is a 1, and after that you are having plus b minus 2 v divided by 2 square minus b divided by 2 square. Combine the first 3 terms, become a big bracket, and after that rephrase your final answer. Right, so generally this is a step for a completing a quadratic equation. Okay, alright. Then now, for example 1, this is a harder one, right? Because I need to teach you how to factorize the negative out before you can completing the square. Okay, so for example 1, it is a very straightforward question, so I hope that you can do it yourself. So for example 1, the answer that you have should be x minus 3 square and then minus 9. Okay, so please make sure that you try this example yourself, and then you can get this answer. Alright, so if you cannot get this, you can ask me, or maybe you can let me check the answer of which step you do it wrongly through Facebook Messenger. Alright. Okay, so this is the very first part that we have, which is completing the square. Alright, so for the next part, in the next video, we are going to learn how to solve the quadratic equation. Alright, where you also learned it before. So this is just a very quick revision for you only. Alright, so we'll discuss this in the next video. Alright,